Cord. I'd like to welcome everyone to our Friends of CASE webinar with our great friends at Presence Learning. My name is Bridget Bright. I'm the Associate Executive Director of CASE, which if you're not familiar with CASE, CASE is the Council of Administrators of Special Education, and it's our mission to advance the field of special education through professional learning, policy, and advocacy. And one of the ways we do that is through our great partnerships with corporate partners like Presence. Just to share a couple things on the horizon, our national conference is coming up very quickly. This year it will be the first week of November in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Our friends at Presence will definitely be there with us. So we will also be celebrating the 50 years of IDEA. IDEA is turning 50 this year, so we're going to have a special party with live band and music and networking. So if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to visit our website and learn more about the 2025 CASE conference, which, by the way, was listed as one of the top education conferences for 2025. This is the second year in a row, so we're really excited about that. But without further ado, on to what we're here to learn about today, and I will turn it over to Hannah.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Bridget. Welcome to the Friends of CASE webinar entitled Smarter Service Delivery, Supporting Special Education Through Technology, where we plan to explore modern solutions to challenges that districts are facing. Before we dive in, I'd like to offer this prompt to better understand who's joining us today and the challenges your district is facing. So the poll question is, what is the biggest challenge your district faces when allocating special education staff and resources? Is it balancing caseloads equitably, allocating budget equitably, travel time between schools, transient staff or student population, or something else? And while you guys are noodling on that, I want to encourage you all to join the conversation in the chat during this webinar and during this poll. We are going to have some time at the end, hopefully, to answer any questions or look back on any comments you may have had. So please feel free to participate in that way. And if you're not able to stay the whole time, I also wanted you to know that we are going to make this recording available after the webinar. All right, I'm seeing everyone participating. Katie is saying allocating the budget. Managing caseloads is really big. Transient staff or student population. Another one for managing caseloads. Travel time, which is huge. All right. Trisha is saying that she is at a small charter school with almost 40 special education students doing everything. Wow, reporting, meetings, services. That is amazing. That is a lot on your plate. Okay, and balancing caseloads, again, having enough staff. Well, I'm really happy to hear that these were options that resonated with you when we built this poll. We were really building it to help us reflect on some of the topics that we're going to cover today and some of the challenges that Jennifer has also faced at her school district, which brings me to our introduction of Jennifer. So first, I'm Hannah Werner. I have not officially introduced myself. I'm a speech and language pathologist, and I'm a clinical expert here at Presence. And I'm also the lead for our award-winning, our award-winning platform, Kanga, which is revolutionizing how clinicians deliver services. I'm joined today by Jennifer Svady, a fellow SLP and the special education coordinator at the Central Kansas Cooperative in Education, or CKCIE. Jennifer and her team have faced challenges from serving expansive rural districts, staffing shortages and turnover, a transient student population, and managing the allocation of the right resources for a diverse student population. And we're really excited to dive into how her team has leveraged our platform, Kanga, to overcome some of these challenges. So, hello, Jennifer. Thank you for joining me today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I want to give you, I want to give our audience a little bit of context for our discussion. So please tell us a little bit more about the Central Kansas Cooperative.
Yeah, so that information there all looks correct. Yeah, we are a larger school district or special education cooperative. We're located kind of in the center of Kansas, and we have, yeah, 12 different school districts that we provide services to, a little over 3,000 students receiving special education services, and in a large geographical area. We have lots of small, tiny school districts and then some larger ones as well. So we kind of get to experience all of it.
Yes, absolutely. And this 4,000 square miles is a huge service area, a lot of balancing of caseloads, allocating of resources, all the things. I also think that it's important to note that you serve a population, like you guys live close by. Is it an Air Force base?
We live near a military base, yep,
Military
that
base.
our boundaries kind of come right next to the military base. And then so they're covered by a different special, but we get a lot of people moving back and forth in those two from their area to our area on
Yeah,
base and off. So
yeah. So that kind of builds in both a transient staff and student population as well. And then I would love to tell you guys a little bit more about Presence. Presence is a leading provider of special education and related services and mental health solutions since 2009. So long before COVID, we were providing teletherapy services to schools across the country, and we were really trailblazers in the way of establishing standards for providing high quality remote related services. Since 2009, we've grown quite a bit, serving nearly 10,000 schools in 47 states, delivering over 7 million teletherapy sessions, and impacting the lives of over 285,000 pre-K through 12 students. And all of this has been done on our award-winning platform that we're here to talk about today, which has really been curated for this specific service. Most notably, we've partnered with major publishers to perform the first equivalency studies for remote administration of assessments. And that's really so we could train our clinicians on proven standards for services. So there's a lot of value packed into our platform, and we've done a lot of work to make sure that it's the right tool for the population that we're serving and for the clinicians that we're supporting. So yeah, that's what we're here to talk about, this revolutionizing technology that clinicians across the country, including Jennifer's clinicians, are using to provide great services. And that technology is called Kanga. And Kanga by Presence is a platform optimized for the delivery of therapy and assessments, enabling schools to reach every student and to extend the impact of their team beyond their building. And so, since we're all clear on that, I'm going to unshare so you guys aren't looking at slides this whole time and really just have a conversation with Jennifer about her experience with Kanga. Um, all right. Hi. So I love talking to another SLP turned administrator because you really understand where your clinicians are coming from. And today, while we're going to talk about a new way of providing services, before we do, I think it's important that we anchor ourselves a bit to the habits and maybe the joys of what I'm going to call SLP culture. So tell me a little bit about how you've provided services in the past, both from the perspective of a clinician and an administrator.
sure. I started as an SLP in 2010 and came fresh out of graduate school where I had everything that I needed in graduate school. It was all right there at my fingertips. Any assessment that I wanted, any material that I could possibly want, it was there. And if it wasn't there, they were able to purchase it to a school district that had they were already understaffed in our SLP department. And so coming in, it was a very welcoming environment. Everyone was excited, but I didn't have the same type of materials that everybody else had because I was fresh and new. I think I had one assessment, and then we shared that assessment between so many different people. I was doing, just the traditional, you kind of pull a kid or a group of students down. We, provide services and kind of send them on their way. Wasn't providing services outside of my building. It was just kind of me and my little building, and that's where I stayed until it was time to go to a department meeting. Yeah, and then we kind of shifted and adjusted from there to deal with more staff shortages.
Yeah, whenever I started working, I was at this school that had a closet and like a filing cabinet. And I remember just like digging through because there was nobody there to really shepherd me through like my resources. They were just like, you're in this building and, have at it. And so I just remember like a deck of cards that were really old, like from the 80s, and I was using it for as much as I could. But you were really limited to the resources, whatever resources were bought for whatever clinician 20 years ago who happened to leave it behind in that filing cabinet. And so I really found myself looking for resources, creating so many resources, so much printing, laminating, Velcroing, and then having to think through like, how am I going to organize this so I never have to do this again? And then doing it again anyway, because like I get a student that has like some really special need that I want to like really cater to. So just a lot of recreating, creating, spending money on new
Yes,
things.
yes, yes,
Yes.
all of that.
And I really, your comment about the assessments, I think is so important to highlight. You're so limited to what the assessment that's at your building or even accessible from the central office, but at that time when you need it.
Mhm.
I've heard my friend Bonnie, who's done other webinars. She's a school psychologist. She loves to talk about, you've got two school psychologists who are meeting in like a Circle K parking lot, and they're trading test kits at midnight. Um,
Yes,
and I think that is it's something that us SLPs were doing too. We're trying to share a lot of resources.
yeah,
And it really limits what you can assess and what you can assess formally and well, and what you're able to do with that student effectively.
yes.
Yes. Okay. So now that we have talked a little bit about what has been, let's talk about how you have leveled things up for your staff. Um, so can you walk us through how you first discovered Kanga and what your district's needs were at that time?
Yeah, so we had two groups of SLPs, and one was the group that was near retirement age, and they all retired at the same time. And so then we were left with this big void in our department, and we just did not have enough applicants. And so we began working with Presence for contract speech services and had a great relationship. Things were going really, really well. And then the pandemic happened, and suddenly we were all teletherapists for a period of time. And our director at the time had been talking with Presence and had discovered that the platform was available to be licensed, and you could purchase just a license for even your in-person SLPs. So we did that during the pandemic for that chunk of time where we were working from home to finish out the school year and any of our summer services. And then when we came back the next year, we had students that were in so many different variations of how they were attending school. So you had students attending a brand new, newly developed virtual school. We had students that were staying home and maybe homeschooling. We had students that were in buildings, but on different schedules where they might come in different days of the week. I'm just trying to mitigate some of the, effects of the pandemic at that time. And what we discovered, one was that we could do this. We could provide services in a variety of ways using when we had a good tool at our fingertips to help make things go, make our therapy effective, be efficient with our time, all of those things. And so we were doing speech therapy in a variety of ways where we might have two kids in front of us and our computer sitting on the table as well, providing services in a group setting, but with one student who is at home or in a virtual school. I particularly had one student there he was in person at school, but he had selective mutism. And he also had significant speech sound errors. So he didn't speak at school. And when he did, it was very difficult for people to understand him. And I could not get him to come down to the speech room. He had such anxiety. So even within our building, I used the platform and I provided services from my speech room while he was in
Wow.
his classroom. And so
Wow.
we've used it ever since for all of those things.
I think that's so cool. And I think what's interesting to highlight, because I talk to schools across the country that are at different stages of acceptance, let's say, with this technology. And um, during the pandemic, there was really a moment where schools and clinicians were either endeared to technology or they were endeared to their old way of doing things. And it really depended on how well that transition to remote went. And so it sounds like CKCIE did such a good job kind of going all in on a really robust tool that could do all the things they needed to do. You didn't have to like cut corners or figure it out. Um, and then you had the opposite effect. You had a team that was endeared to technology, and they've been able to take what they've learned into kind of like this new way of doing things, this hybrid approach to your services.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And we were able to do things like providing services in multiple locations at the same time without having to drive and lose, precious time in the day. We've expanded, and even now we have one school psychologist that uses the platform. We have a special education teacher that lives in Costa Rica, and she provides special education services using the platform in our schools within our cooperative. And yeah, it's just a tool that allows us to do so much with less.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more um, about that, like the different ways your clinicians are getting creative with this technology to manage their caseload or to share their resources or use their resources.
Yeah, well, we had talked a little bit about how our large geographical kind of area that we cover and we serve. So we have some school districts that are really tiny and kind of on the very edge of our boundaries. And unless you just have an SLP or a teacher just drop in that area, sometimes it can be really challenging to serve all
Hmm.
of those locations. You either have someone who's spending a significant portion of their workday driving and on the road,
Yeah,
um, or limiting the number of days that a person is available to a school in a school district. So for us, that platform allows us to, take a person who's on both ends of our on one end or the other of our cooperative and be able to serve kids without losing any time, being super efficient. And the same with, yeah, our teachers are the same way. It's like we have 20 minutes or 30 minutes here of her schedule that's open, and we have this one student in this remote location that really needs some extra reading support. So we can provide
yeah,
that and give him some extra support because we have the efficiency of not having to travel to him. We can just meet him where he's at.
yeah, that's so powerful and so cool that you guys are doing that. Um, when we've talked previously, you shared a story about one of your clinicians, and maybe it was the first time it occurred to you that you could continue to use it outside of the pandemic, or outside of just the student being remote. So tell us a little bit about this clinician who was moving and how you were able to retain them.
Yeah, so we had one of our SLPs who was moving across the state. She did not want to try and find a new job. She was very settled and loved her job, loved her students, and didn't want to, have to start all over again with a new school district and build new relationships when in the middle of her move. So she stayed with us. That was kind of the turning point where that was shortly after the pandemic where we had kind of decided, okay, we're jumping into just hiring our own teletherapist for our cooperative. So we knew that we had the platform, we had all used it, we knew how effective it was. So we just jumped in and started hiring, and we hired her as our first CKCIE teletherapist, even though we were still contracting and needing teletherapy services that we contracted with. We started to hire our own, and we found that there were lots of people who were on the military base who were like moving here and there. We had one of our own SLPs whose husband was in the military, and so then they had to be relocated. She's back with us. She's in person now, but for a while she was teletherapy with us just so that she could continue with her caseload and with her students, that she had already built relationships with those families in her school team. So it was helpful for us in that we weren't constantly having to, get someone new in here who had to learn everything. We were able to just continue services as they were.
Yeah, I love that's such a powerful story about retention and like easing that burden, especially when you've got this transient kind of staff, but also continuity of care for the students, where they're not disrupted in their journey with a clinician. That rapport is so important. So I love to hear that. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you're using it flexibly with students as well.
Mhm. Yeah, we have had some students that, yeah, have really struggled to like maybe the transition out of their safe space. Their classroom is challenging. And so
Mhm.
sometimes we will provide teletherapy, even though there's an in-person SLP there. We have students that are homebound. And so sometimes that's another challenging population to try and serve when you have a larger number of students that are receiving homebound services, but then it allows our SLP to kind of connect with the caregivers at the time to collaborate together and to work together to meet student needs. Um, like I said, I think earlier, we have some SLPs that serve multiple buildings, and so scheduling is a nightmare. That's the
Yeah.
worst part of being an SLP, I think, is just
Yeah.
trying to fit everybody in your schedule. And so she has some secondary students that are pretty independent about being able to log into her room, and so she can, combine a student in our 18 to 21 program with a couple of high schoolers that are maybe getting services. And so then, she's able to do that across multiple buildings for the same session. So it just is supportive in that way as well for efficiency of time too.
Yeah, that's so cool. So you have some clinicians who are doing these hybrid grouping sessions, trying to serve a student. But, sometimes students need to be seen in a group also. And so just being able to match them with that perfect group opportunity is something that doesn't always exist, whenever you're limited to your building.
Yeah.
Um, I love your story about the student who was selectively mute.
Mhm.
I think it's something that um, is I think it's something that's worth pointing out, I guess, that for some students, this modality of service is a least restrictive environment for them. This is an accommodation that maybe they need in order to reach their goals. And so I love that you thought of Kanga, you know, before anyone had to tap you and tell you, I guess, because I'm so often trying to encourage people, and share insights from our own providers about the gains that they're making with students that maybe even weren't possible whenever they were in person. And it's just so true.
Oh yeah, with that one particular student, sometimes as a therapist, you're kind of like, what else can I try? What else can I do? Or like, like, I'm not making a difference.
Yeah.
But for that one student, it was just a unique experience that someone had suggested, well, I wonder if he would do better in teletherapy
Yeah.
because it takes away the pressure of sitting in front of an adult who's asking me to say things when I know I struggle to pronounce
Yeah.
sounds and my intelligibility is not good. And so for us, we were able to start with that and build a very trusting relationship. And then sometimes I would come down to his classroom to
Yeah.
provide some of his services. And I just kind of, we did a mix of it until then he felt comfortable enough to come to a group, or he was my one student that I would put him on the computer
Yeah.
at my speech table while I had two other students in person. And so he still was able to get some group therapy where he was engaging in social communication back and forth with some peers. He just didn't have to do it face to face. And so then it just allowed for us to include him in ways that he probably wouldn't have been able to participate without the
Yeah, and
platform.
you're really scaffolding that social interaction in a really progressive way. And
Mhm.
I think it's easy whenever you're talking about this transition to technology, whether it's teletherapy or just using more technology in person. I think there's a bias to point out all the negatives or all the ways that it doesn't fit for kids, but there are a lot of ways it really does fit for kids, and it's just an interesting area to explore and to be open to. Um,
You know, Hannah, the one thing I will also say that because we had pushback and we had some hesitancy among
mhm.
building administrators and even some of our just district leaders. And the benefit of the platform is that you can join a session as an
Yeah.
administrator. You can watch it without disrupting the therapy and just see how effective it can be and that it doesn't differ from your face-to-face sessions. The only difference is, kind of the screen or the mode in which we're doing it. And so that was helpful for us for getting some buy-in from building administrators and also from parents. Sometimes parents have been hesitant of like thinking that a face-to-face person is has got to be better. And it
Yeah.
doesn't, that doesn't necessarily that's not exactly true as I experienced with my, student with selective mutism that he, a face-to-face therapist or face-to-face session wasn't actually better for him. But they were able to see him engage with me on the platform because they were able to join a session without him knowing because, their
hmm
computer wasn't on or their,
Yeah.
sound was muted. And so that was helpful too.
Yeah. I think that's so cool. And I mean, mind you, this context of interaction is actually a very meaningful and important context in this day and age. So when we're
Yeah,
talking about social skills or we're talking about role playing, we're talking about all of those things and making it modern, this is important. And having this option is actually really great for students today, I think.
I agree.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about therapy and how Kanga is supporting therapy throughout your district. Tell me a little bit about how you guys are using it for assessments.
So all of our hired teletherapists are using the platform for their assessments. It does give them access to a wider variety than the assessments that we would have in person for physical test kits and things. It's super easy to administer. They just need their support person on the ground to be there and kind of all of them have developed some kind of a system for how they're making sure that um, they're doing things according to the directions of the assessment and making sure that everything is fitting in within the guidelines of a test administration. And so it's gone really, really well. I feel like all of them, we had tried to provide for them an additional like here, let's try this online testing component. It actually didn't work as well for them as the platform did. And so all of them
Mm,
had just kind of requested, can we just use the Kanga platform because it works better in our context as a teletherapist than trying to do additional online assessments. So we love
yeah,
it.
that's great. And you told a story in our preparation for this about a therapist supporting another therapist with access to an assessment. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think it's such a good story.
Yeah, like I think I was saying, coming out of college, in grad school, any assessment that you could ever want is locked in some case somewhere, and all you have to do is get the person with the key, and you have that assessment. And so you
Hmm
can use any number of things. But if you have a student that, maybe you need to assess their executive functioning skills or something super specific, even stuttering, or you don't feel like you have a good battery for that, one of our teletherapists was able to say, like, hey, I have access to this test through my platform, and was able to help support and said, I can administer this to, to your student. And so they're just supporting each other in that way too, of like, you know, maybe not all of us as SLPs within our cooperative have access to the platform, but we are able to lean on each other in that way and collaborate in that way to make sure that we're assessing students every single need and all of the things that we feel like we need to assess them in, even if we don't have a physical copy of a particular assessment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really helps you develop a super meaningful and specific educational plan for the student when you have the right instruments at your fingertips. And so often that is a gap for clinicians.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much. We're going to jump into the platform now because seeing is believing. And I'm going to share my screen again. And what I'd love to do is walk through the different spaces of Kanga and just talk about how you're using it, and what your clinicians are loving about it. All right. So this is Kanga. When we talk about Kanga, we're really talking about three virtual spaces. There's a dashboard, a library, and a room. The dashboard really serves as your virtual office space. The library is your virtual library or closet or game shelf, whatever you want to call it. And then the room is really where you're meeting with the student or how you're bringing the student forward or how you're bringing the content forward for your student. Um, and so here within the dashboard where we are right now, this is where clinicians go to not only find support, which there is a lot, both for onboarding and on-demand tech support. It's also where they can go to manage their caseload. So we do have this ability to build in your roster into the platform, and really replace the file folders that might be on a clinician's desk where they're housing IEP information, contact information, goal information and progress, and then their daily session notes. What I love about the dashboard for our Kanga users is it not only allows them to really document efficiently, and to store their information in a way that is findable. It also provides our administrators insight as well into notes that clinicians are adding from the administrator's dashboard. So Jennifer, how are your clinicians using the dashboard?
When I reached out and asked all of them, what's your favorite part? This page that you're on is by far everyone's favorite part. And really, the reason it's their favorite part is because it makes progress reporting time
Yes, yes,
so easy for them,
yes.
because they can look back at all of their sessions and very quickly see progress. And so it just makes it so easy to not have to shuffle through like maybe a Medicaid log or something and kind of go through all of those. It's just right there, and it's super easy to kind of tally and get good percentages for progress reporting. That by far is everybody's favorite um, part of the dashboard area.
Yeah, and it's my favorite too. And for all the reasons that your clinicians are saying, you're able to tally from within the room when you're meeting with the student. You're able to tally across the different objectives that you've added into the platform, and it will pull out that objective information, that metric, and give you the date and their progress on that particular objective. And it makes progress reporting so easy. It's definitely a tool I didn't have whenever I was working brick and mortar, and I would have used it all the time. So I'd love to hear that. Okay, let's jump into the library. The library is the second virtual space in Kanga, and this is where we house all of our great content. So this is really the crown jewel, I feel, of the platform. We've worked so hard to make it so awesome. And right now we are looking at our activities library. We actually just reached a really cool milestone where we have 10,000 pieces of content in our library across so many beloved publishers, across three different disciplines. So, OTs, SLPs, mental health professionals, and then for all ages and all needs. So, it really has everything you could want. I love this snapshot here because it showcases each of these buttons represents a publisher that we work with, and we are always adding new publisher partnerships to our library. And as we do, we add a new button so all the clinicians know who's new in the library. So, in regards to our activities, what are your clinicians loving?
They love all the reinforcers are great, but
Hmm.
everyone said the games are like Hasbro, I know as I
Yes,
see on there. Um,
yes,
so like all of the games that they would have in person, they may have access to so many of them. And so, yeah, yeah, we play
hmm,
Candyland in person and then, be able to play the exact same game online. And sometimes it's even more engaging in the online space. And so they love the reinforcers and we love all the games. Also the cards, it's so easy to
yeah,
pull up a deck of cards and just pull it in, swap them out really quickly. I'm thinking about my therapy spaces and I didn't have my cards just like all right near me. And so if I needed to switch, if a student was doing exceptionally well and I was like, okay, we need to find a different target to work on today, I'd have to break up the session by me going and finding a material. With this, it's just all right there and it's so quick to swap things out.
yeah. And all the planning and organization that goes into the card decks, if you do have all the card decks you need, which is questionable, like you have to be able to find it. And that is a skill. A lot of SLPs are type A. I'm not type A. So it was I was really working my hardest to be so organized when it's not my strength. And so when there's technology like this, it's like it really it's an accommodation for somebody like me, honestly. But yes, we've got great partnerships. I love that we have virtual Guess Who, Mr. Potato Head, and Candyland. It makes that transition to virtual easier whenever it's something that you recognize. So that's great. And I know that these are things when we provide remote services, oftentimes those students are joining not only by a computer, but many times from a smart board. And it's also something that you can use when you're in person with a smart board. So these are great no matter where you are. Wonderful reinforcer. And thank you for mentioning the card decks. The card decks are wonderful. I do want to highlight that we have, when I click into card decks, we have over 400 card decks in here that can be used flexibly. So you can use it like in a game of memory or go fish or just as a stimulus or as a widget, which I'll show the widget whenever we jump into the room. But it just cannot be overstated how valuable the card deck library alone is to facilitating really specific targeted therapy. Also, you can create your own card deck. So I'm just going to make that plug. It's just infinite. All right, so we've talked about activities. Let's talk about our assessments library, which is pretty awesome. We work with five major publishers, which many of you will recognize. So ATP, Pearson, ProEd, Riverside Insights, and WPS. You can see here in my all access library, I have over 70 assessments available to me. It's over 40 assessments for our speech and language pathologists. And nearing 70 for our school psychologists. And can you speak a little bit to what your clinicians love about our assessment library?
I think they just love how easy it is to access just a variety of assessments so that they're able to do just a really dynamic study
Hmm.
on a student. Um, like I said, being able to find some like really
Yeah,
specific thing that they need to assess, it's so easy to just go in and find it.
yeah. All right, wonderful. Okay, so let's jump into the room. I did prepare my room a little bit. Okay, so this is Mr. Potato Head. This is um this is one of our Hasbro products. You can see that each of these items or stickers is a manipulative. Just to drive home the fact that this can be a video conferencing tool, I'm going to start my video here, and you'll get another view of me on the screen. So this is how we're engaging with students when we're remote, or how we're bringing forward content for the students no matter where we are. Um, Looking here, we've got Mr. Potato Head. And this is something I commonly do, but you could be working with a student, for instance, who's working on their F sound, for instance, and you could be asking them, which mouth looks like the F sound? And of course, it's this one because we know that this one is a sound. And then we can practice it at the sound level, and we've got Mr. Potato Head modeling it for us. And then we're able to drag down our widgets if we then need to level it up in that moment and bring it to the word level. So we can search our card deck library, which is over 400, and even more if you are making your own. And we're going to find an initial F card deck. I'm going to click into it. And then here, we're able to then cycle through a bunch of stimuli related to that F sound. And then even beyond that, we can use our animations to both celebrate a win, which is always super fun, or to level it up even more and provide that same stimulus in the context of either to illustrate it or to provide that same stimulus in the context of a sentence. So we'll search family. And this is what you have control over this. Um, Here's Ohana means family. You have control over what the student sees. So you can choose the animation that makes sense for that interaction. I have one student who loves an axolotl. I'm always finding axolotls doing things and blasting it for the student. But then now we're able to say it in a sentence and provide like another way of talking about the word. So these are just some of the bells and whistles in the platform. Obviously, it's for therapy and it's for assessments. Tell me a little bit, Jennifer, about what your clinicians love about the room.
Seeing how quickly you're able to just, click through and add something to reinforce, all of those things are also things that our clinicians love. And then those that are serving in sort of a hybrid capacity, so maybe they have face-to-face students and they provide teletherapy for a smaller school district on the edge of our borders, also use it in their face-to-face therapy as well. So we'll pull up a game or a card deck and let kids, our students, engage in that activity on the smart board if they're lucky enough to be in a room with the smart board.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those types of things are all ways that our SLPs are using this, and I think they just love how quick that they
Yeah,
can move between activities or change a game if a student's like not into a game or needs something fresh and new. It's
yeah,
very easy to just pop something new into the
yeah.
screen. So
One way that I know I've used this platform, I've used Kanga in person, is with my laptop, walking around and pulling students for really short, quick intervention. So I think we've all heard of, 5-minute RTIC. It's kind of that idea. But what this allowed me to do is have access to those 400 plus card decks and not have to carry them around with me. And then also, if something changes with the student, I was able to change what I was presenting to the student. And just on that shared screen with the student bringing forward the stimulus, even without all the bells and whistles, without Mr. Potato Head, being able to bring forward the stimulus that we needed to really work on the skill that we were needing to work on was a huge value to me, just sharing the same screen with them.
I agree. It's very quick, very easy.
Yeah. Okay. That concludes the demo. And then honestly, that concludes I'm gonna share um, our final slide here. Um, so that concludes our time. I do want to open this up now to the group if there are any questions for anyone in our audience about what you've seen, or any questions for Jennifer about how she's navigated different challenges in her district. Now would be the moment to ask your questions.
And while people are thinking about those and typing, I just wanted to comment, listening to and learning more about Kanga and Jennifer, your expertise in the platform and how you're making it work in your district is incredibly helpful. As a former special ed director in a rural state, getting resources to everyone. And when you told the
Hmm.
story of having to share assessments, we would have the therapist running between buildings to grab this and share that because you do have to make every single dollar stretch. So I thought that was a great item to point out. And then also being able to see the platform and how engaging it is with the classic Mr. Potato Head and
Yeah,
those type of things. That's really exciting. So
Yeah, we
awesome.
were talking about those assessments and running around trying to get who has it, who has the self, who has the Goldman, just trying to find it, and then thinking that you have it for like 2 days, and so then you've got to test and score, and
Yes.
thinking that you had it done, and then having to call your colleagues and be like, can you look up the score for a, 7, 8, student? This is what the raw score was, and having to just try and collaborate that way to get your scores and things if you missed one. So, yeah, no, this is super helpful for that.
Yeah, I mean you've got the sharing of the easel, but just access to all of the manuals in the library, that alone is a huge value. Being able to go back and refer to the manual at any time is amazing. All right. Well, it looks like the chat is pretty quiet, so this seems like a good moment to conclude our webinar. I want to thank you, Jen, so much for joining us and sharing the creative and progressive ways that your district is tackling some challenges, and finding new ways of working, improving their ways of working. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and to remind you all to look out for the recording after this webinar.
yes, we'll be posting the recording on the CASE website under corporate partners. So if you have practitioners in your district that would like more information, feel free to have them hop on the website and review the content. So thank you, Presence, very much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.